I stood barefoot on the cold marble floor of a foreign hotel lobby, my suitcase open, my phone buzzing nonstop, and my sister's words still echoing in my head like a verdict I couldn't appeal. You ruined our vacation. Not we fought, not things went wrong. You ruined it. People were staring. The concierge pretended not to. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. And in that moment, right there, thousands of miles from home, I realized something terrifying. I was about to be abandoned by my own family, and they were convinced it was my fault. I didn't cry. Not yet. I felt something colder settle in my chest, a quiet understanding that this trip, this family, this version of me that kept swallowing pain to keep the peace, was over. I closed my suitcase slowly, zipped it with shaking hands, and wondered how love could turn into blame so fast. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is my story of betrayal, and if you've ever trusted the wrong person, hit that subscribe button because you are not alone. Here is how it happened. Before I tell you about the lobby, the accusation, and the moment my sister turned on me, you need to understand the promise this vacation carried. This wasn't just a trip, it was supposed to fix us. For years, my family had been drifting, missed calls, passive-aggressive silences, birthdays celebrated with obligations instead of joy. My sister and I used to be inseparable, the kind of siblings who shared secrets under blankets and laughed at jokes no one else understood. But adulthood has a way of stretching cracks into chasms. Careers, expectations, comparisons, unspoken resentments. So when my sister suggested a reset vacation, I wanted to believe her. A week away, sun, ocean, no work, no drama, just us. I ignored the knot in my stomach when she insisted on planning everything. I ignored how she booked activities without asking me. I ignored how she joked, half laughing, about how I was too sensitive and should just go with the flow. I told myself, this is family, don't overthink it. The first day was perfect on the surface, blue skies that looked edited, drinks sweating in our hands, photos taken at just the right angle. My sister smiled wide for the camera, tagged everyone instantly, and whispered to me, "See, this is exactly what we needed." But by the second night, the tone shifted. It started small. A dinner reservation she forgot to tell me about, a joke at my expense that landed a little too hard. When I gently pulled her aside and said, "Hey, that hurt," she rolled her eyes and said, "Why do you always make everything about you?" I laughed it off, again. By day 3, I felt like a guest in my own family. Decisions were made without me. Conversations stopped when I entered the room. When I finally asked what was wrong, my sister sighed dramatically and said, "Nothing, you're imagining things." That's when I began doubting myself. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I was ruining the vibe. I tried harder, paid for meals, agreed to plans I hated, stayed quiet when jokes crossed the line. I thought if I made myself smaller, everything would smooth out. It didn't. The breaking point came on what was supposed to be the highlight of the trip, an excursion my sister had hyped for weeks, expensive, non-refundable, everyone excited. That morning, I woke up sick, feverish, dizzy. My body felt like it was folding in on itself. I told my mom first, then my sister. I said, "I don't think I can go. I'm really not okay." My sister's face changed, not concern, not worry, irritation. "You have to be kidding me," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Do you know how much this cost?" I offered to stay back quietly. I said they should go without me. I said I would make it up to them. I said everything I thought a reasonable, loving person would want to hear. She snapped. "You always do this," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Every time something is about to be fun, you turn it into a problem." The room went silent. My father stared at the floor. My mother rubbed her temples. No one defended me. I felt myself shrinking, heat rushing to my face, not from the fever, but from humiliation. I whispered, "I'm sick," like that should explain everything. My sister crossed her arms. "No, you're selfish." That was the moment something cracked inside me. I said, quietly but clearly, "I won't apologize for being unwell." And just like that, I became the villain. They went on the excursion without me. Hours passed. My phone stayed silent. I lay in that hotel room staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction, wondering how standing up for myself had turned into a crime. When they returned, sunburned and laughing, the air was thick with resentment. My sister didn't look at me. At dinner, she finally said it, the sentence that would follow me all the way to that lobby. "You ruined our vacation." No hesitation, no doubt. That night, the argument exploded, words stacked on words, old grievances dragged into the light. My sister listed everything she'd ever tolerated about me. My mother said, "Can you just apologize so we can have peace?" My father said nothing at all. I realized then that peace in this family meant my silence. I left the table shaking. I packed my bag. I told them I'd find my own way home. And that's how I ended up in the hotel lobby, suitcase open, realizing that sometimes the moment you finally choose yourself is the moment everyone else decides you're the problem. I was reading comments on my YouTube videos the other day, and I realized I wasn't the only one who had been blamed for reacting to disrespect instead of causing it. So many of you wrote, "My family did this too. They say I'm dramatic when I set boundaries. Why does standing up for yourself feel like betrayal?" That's when I knew I had to tell this story from the beginning. Every uncomfortable detail, every silence, every turning point, because what happened next didn't just change that vacation, it changed my relationship with my sister forever. And what she did after I left the hotel was far worse than anything she said to my face. I thought leaving the hotel would end the fight. I really did. I believed distance would cool tempers, that a night apart would remind them I wasn't disposable. I told myself my sister would text, maybe not to apologize, but at least to ask if I was okay. She didn't. The taxi ride to the airport felt unreal, like I was watching someone else's life through a foggy window. Palm trees blurred past, couples laughed on sidewalks. My phone stayed dark in my lap, heavy with expectation. Every vibration that wasn't there felt louder than the traffic. At the airport, I finally sat down and checked our family group chat. There were messages, just not for me. Photos. Smiling selfies, jokes about sunburns, a caption from my sister that said, "Despite the drama, still making the most of it." The word drama burned. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, realizing something slowly and painfully clear. The story had already been rewritten, and I was the antagonist. I typed a message, deleted it, typed again, deleted that too. No combination of words felt safe. Anything I said could be screenshotted, twisted, or used as proof that I was difficult. So I did the thing I had always done best. I stayed quiet. My flight was delayed. Of course it was. Hours passed in that strange airport limbo where time doesn't move forward, it just hangs. I watched families argue softly, then reconcile over snacks. I watched strangers show each other kindness with no shared history, no baggage. And I wondered why the people who had known me my whole life couldn't do the same. By the time I landed back home, exhaustion had replaced anger.
I just wanted my bed. I wanted normalcy. I wanted to pretend this was a misunderstanding that would sort itself out. But the silence followed me. No, did you get home safe? No, let's talk. Nothing. 2 days later, my aunt called. Her voice was careful, too careful. I just wanted to check on you, she said. I heard things got intense on the trip. I asked, what did you hear? There was a pause, the kind that tells you everything before the words arrive. Well, she said slowly, your sister said you had a breakdown, that you refused to participate, caused a scene, and then stormed off to punish everyone. I couldn't speak. She continued, unaware she was cutting me open. She said your parents were devastated, that you embarrassed them, that you made the whole vacation about you. I thanked her for calling and hung up before she could hear my voice crack. A breakdown. That's what they were calling it. I sat on my couch, staring at the wall, replaying the trip in my head like evidence in a trial where I wasn't allowed to defend myself. I remembered asking calmly to sit out because I was sick. I remembered saying I wouldn't apologize for being unwell. I remembered leaving quietly, without yelling, without insults. None of that mattered, because my sister had done what she always did when challenged. She controlled the narrative, and she was good at it. She had always been the charismatic one, the organizer, the strong sibling. Growing up, teachers praised her leadership, while I was described as emotional. Family friends admired her confidence while telling me I needed thicker skin. So when our stories conflicted, whose version do you think people believed? Mine came with nuance, hers came with certainty. The realization hit me like a wave. This wasn't just about a vacation. This was about years of imbalance finally snapping into focus. I decided to reach out, not to my sister, not yet, but to my mother. I sent a simple message. Can we talk? I feel like things were misunderstood. She replied hours later, I just wish you hadn't escalated things. That word again, escalated. I asked, by being sick? By leaving so you wouldn't have to deal with me? Her response came quickly this time. Your sister spent months planning this. You know how much pressure she was under. There it was. Pressure explained everything. My feelings explained nothing. I felt something inside me harden. Not anger, not sadness, but clarity. A painful, sobering clarity. I wasn't being heard because I wasn't meant to be. That night, my sister finally texted me. Not an apology, not a question, a demand. You owe everyone an apology. I stared at the message for a long time. My hands were steady, which surprised me. The old version of me would have rushed to fix things, to smooth the edges, to take responsibility for emotions that weren't mine. But something had shifted. I replied, I'm open to talking. I'm not apologizing for being sick or for leaving a situation where I was being disrespected. The typing bubble appeared instantly, disappeared, reappeared. Then the message came. Unbelievable! After everything we've done for you. She sent another. You always play the victim. Another. Mom's been crying nonstop because of you. There it was, the guilt weapon, sharpened and aimed. My chest tightened, but I didn't back down. I typed slowly, deliberately. I didn't cause this by setting a boundary. Her response was immediate and final. If you can't take responsibility, maybe you shouldn't be part of family trips anymore. I read it 3 times. Part of family trips, not sister, not family, participant? Something broke open then, not in a dramatic way, but like a door quietly unlocking. I saw with painful precision how conditional my place had always been. I was welcome as long as I was agreeable, loved as long as I was silent. I didn't reply. The next morning, I woke up to find I'd been removed from the family group chat. Just like that. No explanation, no goodbye, just gone. I wish I could tell you that was the worst of it, but what happened next is what truly shattered me. because a week later I found out my sister hadn't just told our family her version of the story, she had told everyone, friends, extended relatives, even people I barely knew, and the version she told painted me as unstable, selfish, and dangerous to be around. I learned this when a mutual friend texted me awkwardly, "Hey, are you okay? I heard you had some kind of episode on vacation." An episode. I sat there, phone in hand, heart racing, realizing my reputation, my character was being dismantled piece by piece without me in the room. I finally understood why the silence had felt so loud. It wasn't emptiness, it was erasure. And as I stared at that message, one terrifying question echoed in my mind.
The first instinct I had was to defend myself, to correct the story, to call people and say, that's not what happened. My fingers hovered over my phone, scrolling through names, cousins, old friends, people I hadn't spoken to in years but who suddenly had opinions about my character. But then a heavier thought settled in. Why was I the one scrambling when I hadn't done anything wrong? Still, silence has a cost, and I was about to learn how expensive it could be. It started subtly. Invitations stopped coming. A cousin's engagement party passed without a word to me. A family dinner photo appeared online, everyone tagged except me. Even friends who used to text casually now responded with one-word replies, if they replied at all. I felt like I was walking through my own life as a ghost. One afternoon, I ran into someone I knew at the grocery store, someone who had hugged me at my birthday just months earlier. We made small talk. Then, hesitantly, they said, "I hope you're doing better." "Better from what?" I asked. They shifted uncomfortably. "You know, after the vacation, after everything." That's when it hit me. There was everything I didn't know. I went home and sat on the floor, back against the couch, trying to breathe through the pressure building in my chest. My sister hadn't just told one exaggerated story, she had created a version of me that people now expected to exist. Unstable, dramatic, unreliable. I replayed our childhood in my head, searching for the first time this pattern had shown itself. The memories came fast and sharp. The time I was blamed for an argument she started because I reacted too emotionally. The time she borrowed money and told people I offered it because I felt guilty for being difficult. The way apologies in our family always flowed in one direction, toward her comfort, never toward my hurt. I had mistaken familiarity for safety. The worst part wasn't the lies themselves, it was how easily they were believed. One night, unable to sleep, I opened my laptop, then began writing everything down. Not to post, not to send, just to see it clearly. Dates, conversations, screenshots, facts. Halfway through, I stopped. I asked myself a question that felt almost forbidden. What if I don't fix this? What if I let them believe whatever they want? The idea felt both terrifying and freeing. But before I could sit with that thought, my phone rang. It was my father. He rarely called. When he did, it was usually to relay messages, not to have conversations. "Your mother is very upset," he said, without greeting. I closed my eyes. "She feels like this whole situation got out of hand." I waited. "She thinks you should apologize, just to calm things down." There it was again, the solution that solved nothing. I asked him quietly, "What exactly should I apologize for?" A pause. "Well, for how things unfolded. Not for my actions, for the outcome." I said, "Dad, do you think I did something wrong?" Another pause, longer this time. "I think," he said carefully, "your sister felt attacked." I almost laughed. "So her feelings matter, mine don't?" That's not what I'm saying, but it was what he meant.
I told him I needed time. He sighed, the sound of a man tired of conflict, even if avoiding it meant sacrificing one child's truth for another's comfort. After the call ended, I realized something devastating. No one was coming to save me in this story. If I wanted my voice back, I would have to take it, fully aware of the consequences. The next day, I did something I'd never done before. I told the truth. Not everywhere, not loudly, just intentionally. When a friend asked, "Are you okay?" I heard some stuff. I didn't minimize anymore. I didn't joke. I didn't protect my sister's image. I said, I was sick on a family trip. I set a boundary. I was blamed and left. After that, false things were said about me. No insults, no emotion-laden explanations, just facts. Some people nodded and changed the subject. Others looked uncomfortable. A few asked questions, real ones. And then there were the ones who went quiet because believing me would mean questioning her. I learned quickly who valued truth over convenience, but the real turning point came when my sister found out I wasn't staying silent anymore. She called me late one night. I almost didn't answer, but something told me this call mattered. Her voice was sharp, controlled. "Why are you telling people your version of the story?" I repeated, "Your version? Do you mean what happened?" "You're making me look bad," she snapped. I took a breath. "I'm telling the truth." She laughed, not humor, disbelief. "There is no truth, there's perception." That sentence chilled me. She continued, "And right now, your perception is damaging the family." I said, "You damaged the family when you lied about me." Her tone changed then, softer, dangerous. "You know, people already think you're unstable. Keep pushing this and you'll just prove them right." The threat hung in the air. I felt my hands shake, not because I was weak, but because I finally understood what I was up against. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was control. I said, "I won't lie to protect you anymore." Silence. Then, quietly, she said, "Don't expect us to be there for you." The call ended. I stared at my phone, heart racing, and realized I'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The fallout was immediate. My mother stopped replying to my messages entirely. My father sent a single text, "Please don't make this worse." Worse, as if truth were the problem. I cried that night, not loud, dramatic sobs, but the kind of crying that comes from grieving something you can't get back. I wasn't just losing my sister, I was losing the idea that my family would ever choose me over comfort. And yet, beneath the grief, there was something else, relief. For the first time in my life, I wasn't performing. I wasn't editing myself. I wasn't absorbing blame to keep the peace. I was standing still in my own reality. I didn't know then that this decision to stop protecting the lie would trigger the most shocking move my sister had ever made. Because a few days later, I received an email that made my stomach drop. It wasn't from her. It was from someone at my workplace, and it started with the words, "We need to talk about a concerning message we received regarding you." I read the email 3 times before the words actually made sense. "We need to talk about a concerning message we received regarding you." No details, no context. Just that sentence sitting in my inbox like a loaded weapon. My hands went cold. My mind raced through possibilities. Had someone misunderstood something I said? Was this about my absence during the vacation? None of it added up. My work life had been stable, professional, separate. Or so I thought. The meeting was scheduled for the next morning. No option to decline, no explanation offered. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts looping back to one person over and over again. My sister's voice echoed in my head. "People already think you're unstable." A sick realization crept in.
She hadn't just talked. She had escalated. The next day, I walked into the office feeling like I was on trial. The HR manager sat across from me, hands folded, expression neutral in that way that never means good news. "We received an anonymous message," she began, "expressing concern about your emotional well-being." Anonymous. My chest tightened. "She claimed to be a close family member and said you were experiencing severe emotional distress, episodes of volatility, and that you may not be fit for your current responsibilities." I couldn't breathe. This wasn't gossip anymore. This was sabotage. I asked, carefully, "Did the message include any evidence?" The manager hesitated. "No, but given the seriousness, we're obligated to check in." Check in. I wanted to scream. Instead, I sat there, spine straight, voice calm, explaining, again, how I'd been sick on a family trip, how a conflict had been exaggerated, how false narratives were now spreading without my consent. I hated how composed I sounded, knowing that any crack in my voice could be misinterpreted as proof. After what felt like hours, the manager nodded. "We don't see any issues with your performance," she said, "but I strongly recommend you take a few days off, just to reset." A suggestion disguised as concern. I walked out of the building feeling violated in a way I'd never felt before. My personal life had been dragged into my professional one without my permission by someone who shared my blood. I didn't cry. I felt hollow. That afternoon, I finally confronted her. I didn't call. I didn't text. I sent one message. "Did you contact my workplace?" It took 2 minutes for the reply to come. "I was worried about you." I stared at the screen, disbelief giving way to rage. "You told them I was unstable." Her response came instantly. "I told them the truth. You've been acting erratic." Erratic. Because I refused to apologize, because I spoke up, because I stopped protecting her image. I typed, "You put my job at risk." She replied, "If you lose it, that's on you." Something snapped. This wasn't sibling conflict. This wasn't miscommunication. This was punishment. I blocked her number. It was the first time in my life I had ever done that. The aftermath was swift. Within hours, my mother called from a different number. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail, her voice shaking, not with concern, but anger. "How could you do this to your sister? She was just trying to help you." Help. That word felt like poison. I listened to the voicemail twice, then deleted it. The next few days were quiet in a way that felt unnatural. No messages, no updates, just absence. And in that absence, memories resurfaced, moments I'd dismissed for years. The time my sister read my private journal and told our parents I was mentally fragile. The time she shared my insecurities at a family dinner as a joke. The way my boundaries were always framed as overreactions. I had been conditioned to doubt myself. But now, with distance, the pattern was undeniable. I wasn't dramatic. I was inconvenient. Cutting her off should have felt empowering. Instead, it felt like grief with teeth. I mourned the sister I thought I had. I mourned the family I kept trying to earn a place in. I mourned the version of myself who believed love meant endurance. Then, just as I began to stabilize, something else happened. A message appeared in my inbox from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. "I don't know what's going on, but people are saying some really scary things about you. I thought you should know." My stomach dropped. I asked what things. She hesitated, then sent screenshots. Group chats,
Messages I wasn't part of, conversations where my sister had painted a picture of me spiraling, lashing out, needing professional help. She framed herself as the worried hero, me as the ticking bomb. And people believed her. Some expressed sympathy, others suggested I be kept at a distance. One message stood out, sent by someone I trusted. If half of this is true, she shouldn't be left alone. I closed my laptop and sat in silence, hands trembling. This wasn't just character assassination. This was isolation by design. I understood then what she was doing. If everyone believed I was unstable, no one would listen to me. If no one listened to me, she could say anything. I thought about fighting back, posting receipts, exposing everything. But a quieter, stronger thought emerged. I don't need everyone to believe me. I just need to stop bleeding for people who enjoy watching me hurt. I started therapy that week, not because she was right, but because I deserved support that wasn't conditional. In that space, for the first time, someone said words that changed everything. You're not dealing with conflict. You're dealing with someone who needs you to be wrong so they can stay in control. That sentence settled into me like truth finally finding a home. I began pulling away, not dramatically, not publicly, but decisively. I stopped explaining, I stopped defending, I stopped chasing closure from people who benefited from my confusion. And slowly, something shifted. The noise faded, the panic softened. I began to trust myself again, or at least I started trying. I didn't know then that my sister wasn't finished, because just when I thought she'd done the worst thing possible, she made a move that would force me to choose once and for all between protecting my peace and protecting the truth. It came in the form of an invitation, one that I never expected, and one that would change everything.
The invitation arrived on a quiet Sunday afternoon, the kind of day where your guard is already down. It was an email, polite, formal, almost warm. We're planning a small family gathering next month. It would mean a lot if you came. We need to heal. It was signed by my mother. My first reaction wasn't hope. It was dread, because nothing about the last few weeks suggested healing was the goal. No apologies, no accountability, no acknowledgement of the damage done to my reputation, my job, my mental health. Just silence. And now, suddenly, a gathering. I sat with the email open, rereading it like there might be a hidden clause between the lines. The word heal stood out, glowing like a warning sign. In my family, healing had always meant one thing. I admit fault, everyone else moves on. Still, a part of me, the old part, whispered, what if this is the moment they finally listen? Therapy had taught me to pause instead of react, so I didn't reply right away. I took a walk. I let the thoughts settle. I asked myself the hardest question of all. What do I actually want? The answer surprised me. I didn't want an apology tour. I didn't want revenge. I didn't even want vindication. I wanted honesty. So I replied with one sentence. I'm open to coming if the purpose is a real conversation, not pressure to apologize for things I didn't do. The response came quickly, too quickly. Of course, we just want peace. Peace. There it was again. Not truth, not accountability. Peace. Against my better judgment, I agreed to attend on one condition. I would drive myself. I would leave if things turned hostile. No ambushes, no surprises. My mother replied with a smiley face. That should have been my sign. The day of the gathering, my stomach churned the entire drive. The house looked exactly the same from the outside. Neatly trimmed hedges, familiar porch, childhood memories baked into the walls.
but the moment I stepped inside, I felt it, the tension. My sister was already there. She stood near the kitchen, laughing with relatives, effortlessly charming, the picture of calm concern. When she saw me, her smile didn't fade, it sharpened. "Hey," she said, like nothing had happened. "I'm so glad you came." People turned to look at me. Some smiled awkwardly, others avoided eye contact. I felt like I was entering a courtroom where the verdict had already been decided. We sat down in the living room. Everyone. Too many people. That wasn't part of the plan. My mother cleared her throat. "We're here because we love each other, and because this conflict has gone on too long." My sister nodded solemnly. I waited. "Sometimes," my mother continued, "we all say things we regret, and sometimes it's important to take responsibility for how our actions affect others." There it was. The setup. I spoke before I could stop myself. "I agree," I said, "which is why I'd like to address what was said about me, to our family, to friends, and to my workplace." The room went quiet. My sister's expression didn't change, but her eyes darkened. "I never meant to hurt you," she said softly, turning to the group. "I was just scared. She was acting really unpredictable." Unpredictable. Again. I felt heat rise in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. "Being sick and setting boundaries isn't unpredictable. Contacting my job with false claims is." Gasps, murmurs. My mother's face tightened. "She was worried about you." I shook my head. No, she was retaliating. The room erupted. Voices overlapped. Opinions flew. Someone said, "Let's not accuse." Another said, "Families shouldn't air things like this." My sister wiped at her eyes, perfectly timed tears spilling over. "I can't believe you'd say that about me," she whispered, "after I tried to help you." Help. I realized then what this gathering really was, a performance, and she was the lead. I pulled out my phone. I didn't want to do this, but I'm done being portrayed as unstable. I opened my email, read aloud the message from HR, the wording, the accusations, the impact. Then I showed the screenshots, the group chats, the messages. The room fell into stunned silence. My sister stood up abruptly. "You're twisting things," she snapped. "You're violating my privacy." I looked at her, really looked. "You violated my livelihood," I said quietly, "and my sanity." My father finally spoke. "Is this true?" he asked her. For the first time, she hesitated. Just a second, but it was enough. "I was concerned," she said. "I didn't think it would go that far." The mask slipped. I felt something inside me settle. Not triumph, not relief. Finality. "I'm leaving," I said, standing up. "This isn't about healing, it's about control, and I'm done participating." My mother cried. My aunt begged me to stay. Someone said, "Can't we just move on?" But I had already moved. As I walked toward the door, my sister said something that stopped me cold. "If you walk out now," she said, voice low, "then don't expect to be part of this family again." I turned around. The room held its breath. I said, "I already wasn't," and I left. The drive home was surreal. My hands were steady, my chest felt light, like I had dropped something heavy I'd been carrying my whole life. That night, my phone exploded. Messages from relatives, mixed reactions, some apologies, some defensiveness, some silence. And then, one message from my sister, just one line. "You have no idea what you just started." I stared at it for a long time, because deep down, I knew she was right. I'd exposed the truth, but I hadn't yet seen the consequences. And what she did next was the most calculated move of all. The morning after I left that house, I woke up with a strange calm. Not relief, calm.
The kind that comes after a storm when the damage is done and there's nothing left to brace for. I made coffee. I answered work emails. I almost convinced myself that the worst was over. Then my phone started ringing. Not texts, calls, one after another. I didn't answer at first. I watched the screen light up with familiar names, each one tightening something in my chest. Eventually, I picked up, not because I wanted to talk, but because I needed to know. It was my uncle. "I don't agree with how you handled things," he said immediately. Putting family business out there like that was extreme. I asked, was contacting my job not extreme? A pause. "Well, that was concern. What you did was confrontational." There it was. Intent mattered more than impact. I hung up gently, hands shaking. The pattern became clear within hours. The family split, but not evenly. Some messaged privately, quietly admitting they were shocked that they hadn't known the full story. They didn't say this publicly. They didn't challenge my sister openly. They just whispered support and asked me to be patient. Others closed ranks. They framed my actions as betrayal, as humiliation, as something worse than the lies themselves. One message read, "You could have handled this with grace." Grace, a word so often used to keep people quiet. Another said, "You embarrassed your parents. That will take years to fix." I stared at that one the longest, because I finally understood something no one had ever said out loud. In my family, reputation mattered more than reality, and I had threatened it. By the third day, my sister made her move. Not directly, strategically. A long post appeared on social media. No names, no details, just enough. It's heartbreaking when someone you love is struggling and refuses help. Please pray for families dealing with mental health challenges. The comments poured in. Support, sympathy, praise for her strength. I felt sick. This was smarter than before. No accusations, no specifics, just implication. And implication is impossible to fight without looking exactly like what they're suggesting. I wanted to scream, to post everything, to burn the whole thing down with receipts and timelines and proof. But therapy had taught me something crucial. You don't win against manipulation by becoming louder. You win by becoming unreachable. Still, the toll was real. I stopped sleeping again. My appetite disappeared. I jumped every time my phone buzzed. Even at work, where HR had cleared me completely, I felt watched, like a shadow of doubt lingered no matter how well I performed. This is the part no one talks about. Standing up for yourself doesn't always feel empowering. Sometimes it feels lonely, brutally lonely. One evening, I sat on my bed scrolling through old photos, holidays, birthdays, moments where my sister's arm was around my shoulders and I looked genuinely happy. I wondered when it shifted, or if it ever had been what I thought. That night, I almost caved. I drafted a message apologizing, not for the truth, but for the disruption, for how things came out, for hurting feelings. The old reflex kicked in hard. Just smooth it over. End this. My finger hovered over send. Then my phone buzzed. A message from someone I hadn't heard from in years. A cousin on the edge of the family. Someone who'd always kept their distance. "I saw what happened. I believe you. I walked away from them years ago for similar reasons. It gets better." I burst into tears, not because of the words themselves, but because someone finally named it, walking away. I wasn't destroying the family. I was breaking a cycle. That realization didn't make things easier, but it made them clearer. The next week, my mother showed up at my door unannounced. Her eyes were red, her posture stiff.
"I don't recognize you anymore," she said, standing in my doorway like a stranger. I replied, calmly, "I recognize myself for the first time." She stepped inside anyway. She told me my sister was devastated, that she felt attacked, that she didn't understand why I couldn't just let things go. I listened, really listened. Then I said something that felt like stepping off a cliff. I won't have a relationship with her unless she takes responsibility for what she did. Her face hardened. Then you're choosing this. No, I was refusing something else. She left angry, hurt, certain she was right. That night, my sister tried one last time, a text from a new number. "We can fix this if you stop making me the villain." I stared at the message, heart pounding. This was it, the moment everything hinged on. I typed back, "I didn't make you anything. I just stopped lying." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then nothing. Days passed, then weeks. The noise slowly died down. People moved on. New dramas replaced mine. But something else happened too. I changed. I stopped over-explaining. I stopped chasing approval. I stopped confusing guilt with love. And in the quiet that followed, I noticed something unsettling. I wasn't waiting for my sister, not for an apology, not for validation. I was waiting for myself. Still, just when I thought the dust had settled, a letter arrived in the mail, handwritten, my sister's handwriting. And as soon as I saw it, I knew this wasn't peace. This was escalation. I stood in my hallway staring at the envelope for a long time. I didn't open it right away. Her handwriting was unmistakable, neat, deliberate, slightly slanted to the right, the kind of handwriting that always looked calm, even when the person writing it wasn't. My name sat centered on the front, spelled perfectly, as if care itself were a message. I felt my pulse in my ears. This wasn't an apology letter. This wasn't reconciliation. This was strategy. I finally opened it, slowly, like it might explode. The first line made my stomach drop. "I'm writing this so there's a record of my attempt to fix things." A record, not to heal, not to understand, to document. I kept reading. She wrote about how concerned she'd been for me, how my behavior on the vacation had frightened her, how she'd felt forced to intervene because no one else would. She said she regretted that things had escalated, but that she stood by her intentions. Then came the line that made my hands start shaking. "If you continue spreading false accusations about me, I'll have no choice but to protect myself legally." There it was. The threat, wrapped in calm language, dressed up as reason, signed with love. I sat down hard on the floor, letter crumpling slightly in my grip. This was it, the moment where the story stopped being emotional and became dangerous. She wasn't just trying to control the narrative anymore. She was trying to scare me into silence. I read the letter again, slower this time, and noticed something important. She never denied contacting my workplace. She never denied the group chats. She never denied the lies. She just reframed them. Concern, fear, protection. I suddenly understood why she wanted a record. She wanted to rewrite history in ink. My therapist had warned me about this moment, the point where someone realizes they've lost control over you and escalates to intimidation. I'd nodded back then, thinking it sounded dramatic. It didn't feel dramatic now. It felt surgical. I didn't respond. Instead, I did something that terrified me more than answering her ever could. I told the truth publicly. Not on social media, not in a rant, not emotionally. I wrote a clear, factual message and sent it to a small group. my parents, a few relatives who had been vocal, and one neutral family elder everyone respected. I outlined everything: the vacation, the accusation, the contact with my workplace, the group chats, the letter. I attached evidence, screenshots, emails, dates. No insults, no diagnoses, no speculation. Just facts. Then I ended with one sentence. I am setting this boundary in writing. I will not engage in further communication that misrepresents me or threatens my livelihood. My finger hovered over send. This was the point of no return. I pressed it. The response was not immediate. Hours passed, then a full day. The silence was unbearable, but different from before. This time I wasn't waiting to be chosen. I was bracing for impact. When it came hard. My father called first. His voice was strained, older somehow. "I didn't know," he said quietly. Those 3 words cracked something open in me. "I asked her directly," he continued. "She admitted she contacted your job. She said she thought she was helping." Helping. The word felt smaller now, hollowed out. "And?" I asked. "She doesn't think she did anything wrong." Of course she didn't. My mother sent a message later that night. It was long, defensive, emotional, full of justifications, but buried in the middle was a sentence that changed everything. "I wish you hadn't shown everyone the screenshots." Not, "I'm sorry this happened to you." Not, "You didn't deserve this." Just regret that the truth had witnesses. That's when it fully hit me. They weren't angry because I was wrong. They were angry because I was undeniable. 2 days later, the family elder called a meeting. Just immediate family, no audience, no performance. My sister didn't show up at first. When she finally did, she looked furious, not hurt, not sad, exposed. She tried to speak, to reframe, to cry, but something had shifted. For the first time in my life, people interrupted her. They asked questions, specific ones. "Why did you contact her workplace? Why didn't you tell us you removed her from the group chat? Why are there messages calling her unstable?" She stumbled, not because she was unprepared, because she had never been challenged before. I didn't say much in that meeting. I didn't need to. The truth had already spoken. At one point, she turned to me, eyes blazing, and said, "Are you happy now?" I answered honestly, "No, but I'm free." The room went quiet. That was the moment. Not when she was exposed, not when the lies were named, but when I chose myself without apology. The fallout was immediate and irreversible. My sister stopped contacting me altogether, not dramatically, but coldly, like a door slammed shut and locked from the other side. Some relatives distanced themselves, uncomfortable with the reality of what they'd enabled. Others reached out quietly, admitting they'd been afraid to speak before. And my parents changed. Not enough, not fully, but enough to matter. Weeks passed. Then something unexpected happened. I stopped replaying conversations in my head. I stopped waiting for messages that wouldn't come. I stopped needing them to understand. The fear lifted, and in its place was something I hadn't felt in years: self-trust. One evening, I reread the letter she'd sent, the threat, the calm manipulation, and I realized something chilling. If I had apologized earlier, if I had stayed quiet, if I had folded for peace, this would have kept happening. Different situation, same ending. I folded the letter and put it away, not as a wound, but as proof. Proof that walking away wasn't betrayal. Staying silent would have been. Still, there was one final thing left to face. The question everyone kept asking me: "Do you miss her?" And the answer was complicated. Yes,
I missed the sister I thought I had. But I didn't miss the fear. I didn't miss the erasure. I didn't miss shrinking to survive. And the final realization came quietly one night, sitting alone in my apartment. She didn't lose me because I ruined a vacation. She lost me because I refused to ruin myself. The quiet that followed everything was strange at first. Not the awkward silence of waiting for a message, not the heavy quiet of being ignored. This was different. This was peace without permission. I didn't wake up checking my phone anymore. I didn't rehearse conversations in the shower. I didn't flinch when my name came up in a room I wasn't in. Life didn't suddenly become perfect, but it became mine. And that was new. People ask me all the time, was it worth it? They usually mean, was losing your sister worth telling the truth? Was breaking from your family worth your pride? Was peace worth the cost? What they're really asking is whether I regret not apologizing for something I didn't do. Here's the part no one prepares you for. Walking away didn't just cost me my sister, it cost me the illusion of unconditional family love. It cost me the role I'd been assigned, the peacemaker, the absorber, the one who bends. It cost me relationships that only survived when I stayed small. And yes, that hurt. I grieved her in waves, sometimes triggered by something as small as a song we used to love, sometimes by seeing sisters laugh together in public and feeling that old ache rise up unexpectedly. Grief doesn't mean you made the wrong choice. It means the bond mattered, even if it was broken. What I gained, though, was something I didn't know I'd been missing my entire life. I gained clarity. I saw how often family loyalty had been used to excuse cruelty, how keeping the peace always meant silencing the same person, how being labeled sensitive was just a way to avoid accountability. I stopped asking myself, why couldn't they love me better? And started asking, why did I accept love that hurt? That question changed everything. Slowly, my life reorganized itself, not dramatically, not overnight, but honestly. I built routines without anxiety attached to them. I surrounded myself with people who asked questions instead of making assumptions. I learned what it felt like to disagree without being punished for it. I learned that boundaries don't push the right people away. They reveal who never intended to respect you in the first place. Months later, I ran into someone who knew my sister. They hesitated before speaking, then said, "I heard there was a lot of drama." I smiled calmly and replied, "There was a lot of truth." They didn't push. They didn't need to, because for the first time, I wasn't trying to convince anyone. That's the real freedom. The story didn't end with a big apology from her. It didn't end with a family reunion or a tearful reconciliation. It ended with something quieter and far more powerful: acceptance. Not acceptance of what she did, acceptance of who she is and who I no longer needed to be. I stopped waiting for her to understand me, stopped hoping she'd suddenly grow accountability, stopped needing closure from someone who benefited from confusion. Closure isn't something someone gives you, it's something you choose when you stop reopening the wound. Sometimes people ask me if I'd ever reconcile. The answer is simple, even if it isn't easy. Reconciliation requires accountability, and accountability requires truth. Without that, all you're doing is volunteering to be hurt again. If you're watching this and you're in a similar place, being blamed for reacting to disrespect, being called difficult for setting boundaries, being punished for telling the truth, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not ruining anything by protecting yourself. You are not selfish for refusing to carry blame that isn't yours. You are not broken because someone else needs you to be. The hardest lesson I learned wasn't about my sister, it was about myself. I learned that love should not require self-erasure, that peace should not come from fear, that silence is not maturity when it's forced, And I learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't staying, it's leaving with your integrity intact. My family still exists without me at the center of their comfort. My sister still tells her version of the story. Some people still believe her, and that's okay, because I no longer need to be believed by everyone. I only need to be honest with myself. That vacation didn't break my family, it exposed it. And losing a sister didn't ruin my life, it gave me my own back. So if someone ever tells you you ruined everything because you stopped tolerating mistreatment, remember this: the truth doesn't destroy healthy bonds, it only threatens the ones built on control. And choosing yourself is not betrayal, it's survival.